Hey guys, today's top tip is a planing or chiseling basic. But even though it's a basic, it's an easy one to overlook or forget. So it's worth looking at here today. So it comes by way of rounding over these sharp corners because I'm working on the head block here for the neck joint. So there's going to be, there is a mortise cut into this. And then the neck tenon is going to go into that mortise and join. So that block glues into the body on the other side, and that's what holds the neck in, right? So that puts an enormous amount of stress on that point. So absolutely essential. You've got this block taking care of that. Um, but this surface is actually the bottom, right? So I'm working upside down right now. So this is the bottom that's going to glue to the back of your instrument. And you can see here, I've got really fine grain running this way, right? And that's veneer. So it's only about a millimeter thick. Um, and it splits and cuts real easily. And so I don't want any sharp corners or edges digging into that and cutting it like a knife, because of course that's going to completely corrupt the join of the block to the back. Um, this edge, I'm okay, because you can see if you look here, you'll notice if you're astute that it's at an angle. So that means it's going to go across, slightly across that grain. So there's never going to be a point at which it's actually parallel to the grain and cut across it like scissors on a dotted line. So there I'm good to go. But that corner is what I want to round over. Now, you might say, well, why not just take your sandpaper or sanding block and just, round it over? Well, if you've ever tried to sand a significant amount of material, you know that it takes quite a lot of time, quite a lot of energy, quite a lot of sandpaper, and creates a ton of dust to get a significant amount off. It's just a lot more efficient use of your time and energy to use a plane or a chisel and first remove the bulk of the material, and then finally come in with your sanding block and round it over nice and smooth and presentable like. Um, Also, another reason you want to do that is when you're hand sanding like this, I mean, you might have a sanding disc or something, some machine, and that's great. Then you're probably okay. But if you are hand sanding, then invariably you're going to sand an uneven pattern into the surface. So you're going to end up with either a concave or convex surface like this. Um, and so, I mean, in any case, again, having a nice, regular, straight edge ensures that you're going to get a consistent line all the way down. Um, and then your last step is to make it pretty. And that's actually that's a top tip twofer, because that's a principle that stands in anything you're doing, right? You always want to follow the order of saw first, plane and or chisel next, and sandpaper is your last resort, at least in terms of removing material. Obviously sanding is for preparing the surface to take finish. Um, but in terms of shaping pieces, saw, plane or chisel, and finally sand. So this side is ready to sand, but since I'm doing all my planing and chiseling right now. I'm just going to continue and go ahead. Now I've marked this edge. And if you think about it, that piece is going to be, like I said, turned over. This corner is not going to be contacting anything. It's going to be floating in the space inside the instrument. So why bother rounding it over? Well, an acoustician, acoustic, someone who knows a lot about acoustics once told me that sound waves don't like sharp corners. Sorry that my phone camera keeps jumping in and out of focus here. Sorry about that. Anyway, sound waves don't like sharp corners. They like curves to flow around. I'm not an acoustics expert. That's why I like to know one. And so I'm going to trust that what they're saying is a real thing. So I want to go ahead and round that over for that reason. So, I could take my plane and I could go ahead and set it at my 45-degree angle and start shaving away, right? And everything goes great as you dig in, and then you're moving along, and you've got grain supporting the grain before it, supporting the grain before it, supporting the grain forward, until you get to the end, and it's free fall. And you end up tearing off a huge chunk of your piece. And that just ends in tears. And we don't want that to happen. So what do we do? Well, you might think, well, I can, put a piece there to shore up that material and support it, right, in place of the grain. Except that, now with a chisel, that works fine, right? You could do that. Still, I'm not crazy about a chisel because there's still the chance that it could be rotating. And so then I'm going to have this, wavy line, squiggly line going this way and that way as I get to the end. I like a plane for this operation because it sits really steady and glides along and creates a nice flat surface. And then I can change my angle and kind of soften it and round it, right? So problem is that the blade is still inset a fair ways into the sole, and I'm only going to get halfway there. And now I've got a problem. I've got half of it planed away, and half of it is still there. So that's not going to work. What to do? Well, this is where it is handy to have a nice sharp chisel or a razor blade or a utility knife, any kind of sharp edge. And what you want to do is come over on this side and get it in the camera here. There we go. So come over on this side, and you want to set it at the corner at about the same point where your chisel blade would be coming from the other direction, right? Sorry, this is tricky. From the other direction, this way. So you want to envision that from this side. And you want to just gently dig in a little bit and make a cut into that corner, just a light cut. Doesn't have to be very deep. I don't know if you can see it, if the camera's picking that up. But right about there. And what that does is it creates relief at that point, so that when my plane comes along off the end, that's where it's going to give way, not tearing off an unpredictable amount of the piece. Right where I made my cut is where it's going to just kind of nicely shear right off. So it's like a relief cut, and trust me, it'll save you a lot of anguish. So good luck.